Hi, hello, my name is Amy, and welcome to my first ever reading vlog. So, shame, baby was so nervous when she filmed these clips. But for some reason, the first clip just refuses to export, so I'm gonna catch you up on what's happening real quick. So, I'm currently reading two books at the start of this video. Number one, The Shape of Power by Dan F. Swinnon. This follows our protagonist, Brina, and Brina lives in this fantastical city where the rich live inside of these huge gilded walls, and those who are not deemed fit for society are called the outworld, and they live on the outskirts of the city. And she is part of the outworld, and she is kind of sick of being screwed over by the church. She just so happens, however, to be the daughter of a man who started a rebellion against the church, and her father is now rotting in prison for his crimes, and Brina decides that screw it, she's gonna break him out of prison. She meets a couple of unlikely friends along the way. These are spark gazers or sorcerers, and so the stakes just intensify because sorcery is outlawed by the church. So that's book number one. Book number two, I am reading Mrs. March by Virginia Fito. This follows Mrs. March. She is the wife of a famous author, and she's fetching her olive bread from her bodega, as she does every single day, when the woman behind the counter asks her how she feels about being the person that her husband based the main protagonist off of in his book. She says that they're very similar. She takes great offense to that because this woman is a prostitute who nobody wants to sleep with. And Mrs. March is very concerned about how society sees her. She's very concerned about her appearance and how she comes across to other people. And so things kind of start unraveling from there. But that's enough for me. I will let Amy of the past tell you exactly what she is thinking and how she is feeling, and then I will check in with you again at the end. Hello, happy Tuesday. I managed to get home a little bit earlier from work than yesterday, which is wonderful. And my lovely fiance, John, is on his way home. But first, he is going to pick up a sweet treat because I had a really crappy day. And there's only one thing that'll fix a really crappy day. So he's on that. But it looks like it's about to come pouring down. So I wanted to update this vlog while nature is still in my favor and everyone's like out. I continued reading Shapes of Power. I've actually made some notes, some talking points, things I wanted to mention. So to begin with, this is a multiple POV kind of book, and I love it. I love knowing what's happening in everybody's heads. I am so nosy. I would make every single book I read a multiple POV if I could. So I find it particularly interesting because we have both sides of the coin. We have Brina and her companions, and they're like outwalled, and then we also have another character who is kind of close to the church, and the church rules the kingdom. So we have kind of those two extremes being played off against one another in the plot. And then I love that Brina's gang are a little bit older. There is this one character specifically who is such a cynic, and she is such an optimist. And as much as Brina is a kind of morally grey character, she wants to believe the best in people, and this guy just believes the absolute worst in everyone and everything. And seeing the two of them interact and seeing their worldviews clash and how they kind of adopt each other's points of view and perspectives is a lot of fun. There is something about this book that makes it feel like a cozy fantasy. It's not cozy fantasy at all, please, there are high stakes. But I think it's the found family element, if I had to put my finger on it, that just makes me feel like I'm in a warm hug, even though things are really intense. And then it's also really interesting to see Brina come into contact with this magic, right? Because through this magic and the sorcery, she has access to more power than she's ever had before in her life. And it's really interesting seeing what she does with it and how she responds to it and what she feels her responsibilities are and where her boundaries are. What is she willing to do for the cause and what isn't she willing to do for the cause? And so that kind of debate that's happening within her as a character is also just really interesting at the moment. So having a really good time. I think if it sounds juicy to you, you should pick it up, because I think I underestimated this book when I read about it, heard about it. And now that I've picked it up, I'm just so glad that I did. I also made some progress in Mrs. March by Virginia Vito. Fito? I think it's with an F. Fito. And I would watch Mrs. March for the rest of my life. Like, I would tune into her channel, like her reality TV show, so hard, because she is just so interesting. She's so odd. She makes these decisions and they are just so strange. So, for example, when she is recognized in her little bodega as Mrs. March, the wife of George March, and the woman behind the counter asks her if she would, or isn't it strange that your husband based this book on you, she decides she's just gonna leave. She's just gonna like pause the interaction and she's gonna walk out of the shop. And then she's walking out of the shop and she's walking around town and she decides, no, it's been too much for her heart. She needs to go sit down. So she enters this little shop and the waitress comes up to her and says, you know, how can I help you? Table for how many? And she just says, table for two. No one else is coming. She knows this. She knows this full and well. And so the waitress comes back and he asks, like, can I take your order or would you like to wait? And she says, no, I'll order for the both of us. Just like knowing full and well that nobody's coming. So she does a whole bunch of stuff like that, where it's just, I question her tethered to this reality. That it is like a car accident. I think she is making some really questionable decisions, but I can't look away. I love her. I think reading everything from her perspective is great. I want her to narrate my life. It's just, I'm so amused and entertained by Mrs. March. We are talking about some like heavier topics. We are dealing with the idea of identity. And Mrs. March is someone who feels like she doesn't really fit in anywhere. She, at some point, describes her clothes as feeling like they belong to somebody else. And she's kind of sad. And the more you find out about her, the sadder her kind of, like, her story becomes. Because she is just a lonely woman who never feels like she fits in anywhere. And as much as I look at her and think, what are you doing? I also look at her and think, like, I wish I could give you a hug, because she's just so amusing. And then lastly, I picked up a new book. So I'm probably not going to finish The Blood of Others in this vlog. I would love it if I surprised me and did that. That would be cool. But I did pick up Nesting. So this is one of the women's fiction longlisted books, and it's set in Ireland. It's about this woman, I'm not very far in, but it's about this woman who decides to leave her abusive husband with her 2 children, and she is really fighting to justify needing to leave and to justify the fact that it is an abusive relationship, because it's a verbally abusive relationship. And so he has broken her down and knocked her confidence so much that she starts to question her own experiences and how valid her feelings are. So it's a pretty heavy book, but I will say that the audiobook is really excellently done. The Irish accent is my favorite accent, and so I am really enjoying listening to that. But over and above that, the production quality I think is also just really good. So there's one narrator, but how do I say this? The audio changes depending on where the story is or what the narrator is doing. So for instance, they're at an airport in one scene and the flight attendant, it sounds like crackly and far away, and the sound mixing is just really good. When she is on the phone with her mum, for example, you can hear that she is on the phone with somebody else. And so I really admire that element of the audiobook, and I am enjoying it. It is heavy, it is, but her 2 children are also they're a delight. They are very oblivious as to what is going on, like extrinsically, but intrinsically they know that something is wrong. So they are kind of just, their mom's out there fighting for her life and trying to find somewhere to stay and trying to, get into contact with like helplines and people who can assist her in her situation. And her children are just kind of like, can we have cakes? And like, when can we go home? Which is just, so the 2 contrast each other really nicely. But yeah, I think that is it for this update. I am going to read, I think, for the time being, or maybe I might just try to move my silly little body and then read. But that is that for today. Hopefully John gets home soon with that little sweet treat, because it is very much needed and necessary. Anyway, maybe I see you again tonight, but if not, I will definitely see you again tomorrow. Hello, happy Thursday. I hope everybody is doing well. I was supposed to check in yesterday, and full disclosure, I obviously didn't, because I was just in such a foul mood. I decided it would be best for everyone if I left it. I just didn't do it. So here we are. It is Thursday. I work from home today, and I'm super stoked that I don't have to deal with any kind of commute, because it is rainy and cold and dreary. I finished The Shape of Power yesterday, and I had the best time. Such a good time, in fact, that I slid into old Dan the Man's DMs on Instagram, because I think releasing something like this into the world must be so scary. So I really hope that his book gains traction and that the series gains traction. I am so excited for the second book. I have signed myself up for an ARC reader for the next one in the series as well, so that's super exciting. If you want to go check it out, I will leave the NetGalley link below. I will also link his Instagram profile below if you are interested. But because I have finished my first book of April, I get to log it in my bullet journal. Do you want to see? Do you want to see my bullet journal? Good, because I got it out and prepped, so you don't really have a choice. I mean, you do have a choice, you can click off, but I would really appreciate it if you didn't. Here we have my cover page, and then we have my habit tracker. Next to that we have my reading tracker, so this just tracks whether or not I have read throughout the day. I used to track all of the intricacies, like how many pages I read, what I was reading, and that just became a lot of admin. So I simplified it a lot. Here I get to list what I've read throughout the month. I have a playlist that I create on Spotify every month. It is a mixture of new stuff I found and stuff I have rediscovered. So I will link my March playlist below if you want to go check it out. Then I'm trying to be more intentional with my time and with my money. So I have a wish list, and here I write down everything I want to purchase so that I don't just purchase blindly, but purchase with more intention. And then same goes for the bucket list. I make a bucket list for every month of things that I want to do. Otherwise, I feel like I just blend into the ether during the weekends. I just pretend I don't exist. And then Monday comes around and I'm super depressed because I haven't done anything fun. Then we do date nights, John and I, every week. So it's actually my week to plan, and I'm going to do a no spend date night for this week, and then a spending date night for the next one I do. And then same with the meal prep, we take turns. So I just have a little spread for what we're going to eat. I usually, write down pretty much approximately what everything is going to cost me, and I try to keep the budget intact that way. So thank you for letting me show you my bullet journal. I'm really excited about it because I've been wanting to be a bullet journal girly for the longest time, and I did like these elaborate spreads and I just never kept up with it. So I've simplified it a lot. And hopefully that makes it more sustainable. I have been using my bullet journal more so than any other time I have tried to keep one before, so that is super exciting. But back to The Shape of Power, because that's why we're here, right? The Shape of Power was really fun. It was a really good read. I really enjoyed it. I loved Brina as a character because she is so resilient and independent, but without becoming cynical and nihilistic, which is a characterization it's a very hit or miss characterization for me. I either love it or I hate it. And in this case, I really enjoyed it. And I think it's because she retains that sense of optimism, even though everything is really, really bleak. The other characters, supporting characters, were also just fantastic. They didn't feel like supporting characters. They felt so ingrained in the found family aspect of it that I was always wondering how they were doing. I was always wondering what they were doing. And what I really enjoyed about the book is that the stakes ramp up quite a lot near the end, but there are still some really light moments. And I think that the balance of those two things was just done really, really well. So very excited for the second book, and if you are interested, please, as I said before, go check it out. I really hope that this series gains traction. But for now, I suppose I need to get back to work, and then I will check in with you if anything interesting happens. happy Friday. It is the end of yet another working week, and I'm here to tell you that I finished Mrs. March by Virginia Fito last night, and I love this. I read the acknowledgements and immediately ordered myself a physical copy because it was just so good. I love women in crisis. I can't explain it. I won't explain it, but I love reading about it. So I think if you want something like Miranda July's All Fours but make it psychological thriller, this is the book for you. I also think if you want to be a fan of Otessa Moshfegh but her writing is just too violent or too vile for you, then this is something you should pick up in its place for sure. I think if you've already read this but you want something with a similar flavor to watch, give Why Women Kill a shot. I would be very surprised if this book didn't, make it to my favorite book of the year list or favorite books of the year list, because I think it's just so masterfully done. I had no idea what Mrs. March was going to do next, and nothing was off the table. Everything was just utterly believable, and I think writing a character that behaves so unusually but making me believe that that's exactly what she would do in that situation is just excellent. I also think it's really well done because she manages to build up so much suspense through the perspective of one character and one character's view of the world. It was just no complaints. No complaints. Actually, I would have read this if this was 400 pages longer. It could have been longer. I would have enjoyed that. But I actually do think that it ended perfectly. It is also a book that doesn't answer all your questions, so if that is something that bugs you, maybe give this one a miss, but I personally thought that it was perfectly done. Hi, thank you so much for spending some time with me. I really appreciate it. It is currently Saturday. I have some plans with a friend. I have started editing the vlog. I would like to get it out on Sunday, so I'm going to take my time to do that. I hope everybody is having a really lovely weekend, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.